be posting video tutorials each week on anything from cooking and baking with food allergies to woodworking and crafts. So be sure to like and subscribe so that you don't miss a thing. So to get started today, I'm going to be making my basic bread recipe, and I'll use this in a lot of the future tutorials. So be sure that you like and subscribe so that you don't miss those upcoming recipes. So to get started, in this bowl I have 1/3 of a cup of honey, 1/3 of a cup of oil, 1 tablespoon of salt, and I just mix all of that together with 2.5 cups of warm water. So whenever you get your water, you don't want it to be too hot because it will kill the yeast, but you also don't want it to be too cold because it won't rise. So make sure that you test it on your wrist, and rule of thumb is you want it to be slightly warmer than a baby bottle. So you don't want it to be really hot, but again, not too cold. And just mix that together. And we're just gonna get all that incorporated. Now the good thing about this recipe is that it's actually egg and dairy free. So if you have food allergies, this is great. If you wanna make it vegan, you can actually use a vegan sweetener and keep the honey out. The sweetener is just so that the yeast has something to grab onto. So it does need something in there, but it doesn't have to be honey. So just mix all that together, and then we're gonna put in 1 cup of flour and mix that until it's incorporated as well. And we're gonna just mix this to get the glutens forming. So we want that all to get incorporated in there. Just make it so that it's not lumpy. Once the lumps are gone, you can go ahead and stop mixing. Okay, so all my lumps are pretty much gone. So I'm gonna go ahead and add my yeast. Now I'm gonna need 1.5 tablespoons of yeast to go in here. And I'm gonna mix that again to get that all mixed up. And make sure you're getting all of it scraped off the sides because you're gonna want all that yeast to go into this mixture. You don't wanna miss out on any of that. Okay, so once all that is mixed together, I'm just gonna throw it into my mixer. If you don't have a mixer, you can do this by hand, but it's a lot easier to do it into the mixer. And I actually just made a recipe before this, so my mixer is a little bit doughy already. So I'm going to put that in there, and I'm going to put that in with 6 cups of flour. So after we get those 6 cups of flour into our mixer, we're gonna go ahead and knead that for about 5 to 10 minutes. And it can just knead in the mixer all the way. No need to do it by hand. If you are doing it by hand, if you don't have a mixer, then you might need to knead it a little bit longer, maybe closer to 10 or 15 minutes. You just want the dough to be soft but not sticky. So go ahead and knead it in your mixer or by hand. And if it looks like it's still a little bit sticky, you might want to just add little bits of flour in here and there. But typically this is about good. Okay, so that has mixed in the mixer for about 5-7 minutes. And now I'm gonna go ahead and take it out, and I'm going to place it into a slightly greased bowl. Just put a little bit of Pam in there. This is what the dough should look like. Again, it's soft but not sticky, and I didn't have to add any more flour to this, so this one worked out pretty well. Sometimes I have to add in another 1/2 cup or so, but this one's good. So it's definitely soft, but it's not sticking to my hands. So I put a little bit of Pam in that bowl, and then I'm just going to cover it with a tea towel, and that's gonna rise on the counter for about 30 minutes, usually less, but I give it the full 30 just in case. So I'm gonna go ahead and cover that. And once that rises all the way, we're going to go ahead and roll it out, and I'll show you how to. Okay, so that has risen on the counter for about 30 minutes, and now it's time to roll it out. So hair back, sleeves up, and find a nice surface. I've come into the dining room. My dining room table is huge, so I like to roll out dough typically in here so that I can have all my things set up. And I'm getting ready to go, so let's get started. So I've got my dough here, and I'm just gonna divide it into 2 pieces. going to show you how I roll out my bread. Not everybody does it the same. And you can actually also make this into dinner rolls where you just pretty much pull off pieces and just kind of roll it into balls that are equal. And I've done it that way as well. And that way works pretty well too. This way is just the prettier way. So I like to do this for holidays or if we're having people over for dinner. So it just looks nicer than rolls, I think, but you can do it either way. So again, my dough is soft but not sticky, but I am gonna put a little bit of flour down. I use this silicone baking mat so that it doesn't stick. I really like this, but you could just use your counter too. So I'm gonna go ahead and put that down here, and I'm just gonna give it a quick toss in the flour there. Get the excess flour out of the way. You don't want your dough to be dry, so don't use any more flour than you need. So just a little bit about me. I'm a stay-at-home mom, and we've been dealing with food allergies in our family for about 8 years. So that's why a lot of my recipes are accidentally vegan. We actually deal with egg and dairy allergies. So nothing that I will make on here will have any egg or dairy in it. And I've really had to adjust over the years and learn a lot of baking and cooking that I didn't necessarily do in the past. So that's why it's nice to have this bread recipe. You're able to do a lot with it. And it's able to go into a lot of different kinds of recipes. It's also easily adaptable for gluten-free, so if you're gluten-free, you could do that as well. Make your own gluten-free flour substitution combination that you like to use. And it also doesn't have any nuts or tree nuts in it, so it's peanut-free and tree nut-free as well. So this is a really nice basis for a lot of the recipes. So I'm gonna go ahead and roll it into a cylinder like this. And I'm actually not gonna roll out a lot of the air bubbles like you'll typically see in bread recipes because it really doesn't matter for this one, or at least not for me. So I just kind of pinch it together into a nice cylinder, and then I'm gonna cut it into 3 strips and show you what I do from there. Okay, so I'm going ahead and get a knife, and I'm gonna cut this into strips of 3, but we're gonna leave it connected at the top because what we're actually gonna do is braid this together. So I'm gonna cut that strip there. It's a little bit hard to get it separated, so I don't wanna ruin my mat here, so I use a butter knife, but if you're on your counter or another surface that's like harder, then you can use a harder knife, a sharper knife, just get through there a little bit easier. So this is gonna make 2 of these braided rolls, loaves, I guess you could call them. So this recipe will make 2. If you make rolls, it makes quite a few. So just whatever you're looking to do. They do grow quite a bit in the next step in the oven too. So what you see here is not what you're gonna end up with. You'll get a pretty big loaf at the end. So we're gonna go ahead and braid it. So we're just gonna take this end and bring it into the middle. And then we're gonna take our other end and bring it into the middle as well. And we want this to look pretty, so just keep arranging it as you go. And then our original middle piece that's now on the end, we're just going to bring into the middle, and then take this end into the middle and follow with this one and this one. And keep going until you get to the end. Once you're at the end, you're just gonna kind of stick them all together so that they all stay nice, and then you're gonna put them in, just kind of grab both ends and pull a little bit just to elongate the middle so it doesn't get bulky. And then you're gonna go ahead and do the same with the other side. And then they're gonna go in the oven for about 175, 200 degrees. They're gonna go at a pretty low oven just because they're gonna rise again whenever they're in the oven. So they'll go in there for about 15, 20 minutes that way. And then once you see that they've risen quite a bit, then you can go ahead and kick up your oven to 350, and then they'll bake in there for another 30 to 40 minutes, or until you tap the top of the dough and you hear a hollow sound. So depending on how you do it, if you make this way, it usually cooks about 35 minutes. If you roll it into an actual bread pan, they usually cook for more about 40 minutes. And if you make the little rolls, they don't take as long at all. So anywhere from 20 to 30 for those. So we're gonna go ahead and get these in the oven, and I'm gonna show you what they look like at the end and pull it apart so you can see what the inside looks like. Staple bread to just have on hand. If you wanna make it into sandwich bread, you can put it into bread loaf pans, and then you're able to slice it into sandwiches. So this is usually our dinner bread. We eat it with our pastas and stuff. So I don't typically put it in the bread loaf pans, but you absolutely could. So thanks for watching my tutorial on making my basic bread recipe, and make sure that you like and subscribe so that you can see what else we've got coming up. I'll actually show you what else we can do with this basic bread recipe. Check out the comments. I'll have a link in the bottom for using this recipe to make pepperoni rolls. So you don't want to miss out on that. And thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.